Okay, today, this week, I'd like to read from you the memoirs of Princess Alice, the Duchess of Gloucester. Now, this book is a very, very rare find. Here in this picture, she's 80 years old, so her memoirs are marking her life. But it's a very, very difficult book to find. I had to wait a long time from thrift stores for it to be available. And she has a very, very interesting life. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I am going to read to you just the synopsis from the book cover because it explains her life and what you'll expect from this book. It's got a lot of pictures in here from their life and their marriage, and she had quite an adventurous life long before she even married Prince Henry, the Duke of Gloucester. And this is the mother of Prince Richard of Gloucester. He is the current Duke of Gloucester. And I'm just going to bring up the Duke of Gloucester. Of Gloucester. So, yeah, that way you can see, like, this is his mother, and he is the only living, like, his father passed away, and then his mother passed away. He was not expected to be the Duke of Gloucester. He was a very skilled, very talented architect, and I cannot hardly find any books about him. He's very low key. He just gets on and he does his duty for the royal family, and he's got a wonderful wife right here, and he's got children. But here's a younger picture of him, and he was born, 1944. So, yeah. Anyway, his brother William, which you'll find a documentary called The Other Prince William, and you'll see that on YouTube if you ever want to look into that. It's a very interesting story, and he was supposed to be the hereditary heir of the Duke of Gloucester, but he died in a very unexpected airplane crash, and they were both raised to help the royal family. So I'll get on started, and I am going to read. First, I'll read the book cover. Princess Alice, the Duchess of Gloucester, was the daughter of the Duke of Buccleuch, and thus spent her childhood in the ancestral homes of the family, Boughton and Bowell, Drumlanrig and Dalkeith, and the imposing Montague House between the Embankment and the Whitehall. In vivid detail, she evokes this now vanished world, in which armies of servants, tons of luggage, traveled from house to house as the family progressed around the country. The Duke and the Duchess would drive out into their stagecoach with wigged coachmen and footmen in the front and 2 postilions behind. The First World War ended all that, but it would still have been easy for Prince Alice to slip into the leisured, privileged life of hunting, fishing, the London season, and the country house parties. Her sense of adventure, however, took her to Kenya, where she lived for many months in what was still a pioneer's country, teeming with game and almost entirely free from roads, tourists, and other amenities of civilization. She loved the country so much that when her father, growing tired of her constant absences, refused to pay for a further visit, she held a highly successful exhibition of her watercolors to raise the money. In 1935, she married the Duke of Gloucester and found herself drawn into the royal orbit, a life whose pleasures and irritations she describes with fascinating frankness. During the Second World War, she took on many public duties, and quotes from her correspondence with Queen Mary to conjure up a picture of that time and of the 2 years she spent with her husband in Australia when he was the Governor General. Today, at 80, Prince Alice looks back over an extraordinarily rich and varied life, which she describes with charm, humor, and impressive honesty. So that's the end of the book. I mean, this book was only £10.95. It was written, I believe, in 1982. And I'm going to pull up the... So, yeah, when you look through his... if you look through his Wikipedia, I haven't quite mastered some of this stuff, but he really was, you don't really read much about him, but she really was something and someone very interesting and profound. I'm going to just read a brief couple of pages, and this is the prelude to the book before I start going into the chapters of the book. So you get an idea of why she served so well in the royal family. When I was 14, my mother took the younger children to a place called Seascale on the Cumberland shores of the Solway Firth. Mary and I lost no time in putting on our bathing suits and rushing down to the beach. The tide was out. The two of us walked and walked in about a foot of water. At last, it got a little deeper, so I said, "I'll go in till I'm up to my waist, and then you swim out to me." I could not swim very well, and Mary was just learning. So on I went, and suddenly a wave came. I found myself up to my neck, and then out of my depth. I shouted to Mary to go back, but she had not come as far as I had, and had already turned and was splashing for shore. I swam and I swam, but it was no good. Whenever I searched with my toes for the bottom, there was a frightening void. I guess I was in the grip of a current. Apparently, there had been a sign saying, "Beware of currents." But I had not noticed. My mother had no other grown-ups with her, and she came onto the beach. She noticed the sign, and to her horror saw us so far out. Some woman passed by in distraught. She asked them to help. They said they could not see what they could do. In the meantime, I began to feel too tired to go on. "I'll drown and be done with it," I thought. So I gave up, and the shock of half drowning must have brought me to my senses. "I don't want to die. I'm so young. Surely I'm too young to die. I have hardly had any life." And I prayed to God, "Oh God, give me my life. I promise I'll make use of it. If you give it back to me, please give me my life." The next instant, my feet touched the rocks. I was able to stand up and get my breath back. I had been carried quite a way down the coast. Some houses had come and gone on my left, and the rocks proved to be a reef, and I was able to scramble through them into shallow water without further mishap. My mother was furious. "How could you do such a foolish thing? You might have drowned your sister as well as yourself. I've never had such a fright," and so on, which was not very comforting, but the incident changed my life. For years it haunted me. I had made a covenant with God. In return for my life, I had promised to dedicate it to some useful purpose, but there never seemed to be anything that required my help or that I was of any use at. So when, through a series of unforeseen circumstances, I one day found myself allotted a life of public duty, and in the service of my country, a very secret pledge was honored. And that's it. So I'm going to start reading the next chapter. The next chapter is entitled, in a separate episode, the next chapter is entitled Frontispiece, 80th Birthday Portrait. So, and that's that. And it's basically the first third of the book talks, of course, about her life and her. It's very interesting to read about those particular times of her life when she came from more of like an aristocratic type of family that's got deep history with the medieval times of England. So she's related to some deep noble dukes from way back when. But it'll be an interesting read, I promise you, especially when you read about her time in Africa. So I will end it right here.